Welcome, everyone. As always, we're going to do some singing as people come on. This nigun is called the forest nigun, the forest melody, and it came to me a couple of years ago, walking in the forest right near our beautiful moshav. So this is the forest nigun. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. So this week's Parsha is called Vayeishev. I'll say the first verse in Hebrew and then translate it. And we're going to be spending the whole class really just on this one verse to try to understand the deeper significance of what it's saying. So the verse says in Hebrew, Vayeishev Yaakov Be'eretz Megurei Aviv Be'eretz Canaan. And Yaakov settled in the dwelling places of his father in the land of Canaan. So on the surface, it doesn't seem that it's saying all that much. other than a geographical description of where he was. But we're going to delve into this. So the first Rashi is a classic Rashi. It's a classic Rashi that people have been discussing for literally, since Rashi, a good 1,000 years. So Rashi says like this: Yaakov wanted to sit in, the Hebrew word is shalva. He wanted to sit peacefully, blissfully. He had been through so much. His whole life was just like one big test, one after the other. Abraham had 10 major tests. Yaakov, his whole life, in a sense, was a test. From the moment he comes out of his mother's womb, holding on to the heel of his brother, it's just one test of another. So Yaakov wanted to sit. That's the literal word is Vayeishev, means he wanted to sit. He wanted to be in a peaceful place. And Rashi continues this saying, but at that moment, all the troubles of Yosef fell upon him. In this week's portion, we have the whole selling of Yosef. Yosef goes down to Egypt, and Yaakov basically mourns for him until he's reunited with him 22 years later. He's in a sense of mourning the whole time. So that already is, Yaakov needs a break. He wants to sit and be peaceful. And he has another test, maybe the biggest test of his life, that his beloved son is taken from him. The rest of the verse is in the dwelling places of his father in the land of Canaan. So let's continue with the Rashi. The second part of the Rashi is the classic. God says to him, isn't it enough that the righteous will have rest in the world to come? You want rest in this world as well? It's like a loaded dynamite statement about the existential reality of this life. Remember, in last week's Parsha, Yaakov was given a new name, Yisrael. And we learned this last week. Yisrael means that Yaakov fought with God and man, and he prevailed. So this already is telling us that Yaakov, and by extension, the people of Israel, would in a sense be in a constant state of contending with God and man. This is the destiny, this is the fate of the Jewish people. And we learned last week that the challenge can be turned into opportunity, and the opportunity into triumph. But nonetheless, we're told that the people of Israel, and here we see Yaakov, this is his lot in life. So God says to him, you want to rest in this world? That's not your lot. That's not your fate. You'll rest in the world to come. So first I'll bring you an explanation that, in a sense, turns it upside down. And then we're going to delve into this word. What does it mean? He sit, Vayeishev. The root is shev, sit. And we're going to see the ramifications of this word. So it was Rabbi Soloveitchik who said the following. He said, don't read what God said as a question, read it as a statement. Instead of reading it, isn't it enough that the righteous will have rest in the world to come? They also want rest in this world? ? So Rav Soloveitchik said, read it as a statement, not as a question. It it isn't enough that the righteous have rest in the world to come. They also want rest in this world. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that a righteous person wants to bury his head in the sand and not face the challenges of this world. What it's saying is that a righteous person, and we all have a kernel, a spark of a holy connection to God, that of course we want peace in this world. Of course we want moments of bliss. And that's what a righteous person does. A righteous person, even with challenges, even with difficulties, even with tests, can maintain a inside feeling of shalva, of peacefulness. Now, it should be mentioned that the root of this word, Vayeishev, he wanted to sit. This is the root of the word Shabbat. Shabbat has three letters, Shin, Bet, Taf. Shev and Taf. Shabbos is for resting, for sitting, for being in shalva, blissful. So yes, Yaakov wanted, even in a world of difficulties, that there should also be peace. So it's a beautiful reading of taking what seems like a very sharp question. It's not enough for you that you're going to rest in the world to come. You want rest in this world too, and turns it into a statement and saying, yes, not being naive, not hiding one's head in the sand, but wanting to bring down, in a sense, heaven to earth. Okay, now let's look deeper in the word shev. Now, if we go back about 2 or 3 parshas, when God comes and, as it were, visits Abraham after he's performed circumcision on himself. So that opening verse says, V'yera elav Hashem, God appeared to him, the him is Abraham, V'hu yoshev bepetach ha'ohel. He was sitting in the opening of the tent, kechom hayom. It's usually translated in the heat of the day, but it's literally like the heat of the day. Now, the tradition is in both of these verses, it uses that they were sitting. Yaakov wanted to sit blissfully, and Avram was sitting in the opening of his tent. But the sitting, according to our tradition, is they were sitting in meditation. That's the point I want to get to. That Jewish meditation goes all the ways back to the patriarchs and the matriarchs. And it was continued by the elders, by the prophets, by the sages, by the Hasidic Rebbes, by the Kabbalists, until this day. And this word, shev, is like a code word. It's a code word that they were sitting in meditation, because it says Yaakov wanted to sit in shalva, peacefully, in bliss. Well, how do we get to bliss? So this is a code word for meditating, for being in a state of meditation. So going back to our opening verse, it says Yaakov settled in the dwelling places of his father. So the word dwelling places, migurei, also can mean in the awe of his father. Now, when we look at Isaac, Yaakov's father, so he was the most inward of all of the patriarchs. And it says about him, V'yetze Yitzchak l'suach b'sadeh. Yitzchak went out to converse in the fields. And this is interpreted as he went out to pray in the fields, or he went out to meditate in the fields. So here we see Abraham sitting at the opening of his tent. And the significance of the opening of the tent is when we sit in meditation, levels of consciousness open up for us. And remember, he was sitting there in the heat of the day, but it's literally like the heat of the day. So this heat is the passion of the soul to be close to God. So Avram is sitting at the opening of the tent, like the heat of the day. Translated into a more spiritual language, Avram was sitting in meditation, which opened up for him new levels of consciousness, which fueled a heat, a fire of passionate desire to be close to God. Now we'll add one more step here. When the Torah first describes Yaakov and Esav, Yaakov is described as Ish Tam Yoshev Ohalim, as a sincere, whole person who sat in the tents. Now here, again, it's the word to sit. So we have Avram sitting, we have Yaakov wanting to sit, and at the beginning of his life, he's described as one who sits in the tents. According to tradition, what tents are they talking about? The tents of learning. According to tradition, now this is before the Torah is given, but there were spiritual disciplines already being handed down from Adam, from Noah. And this is called the Yeshiva of Shem and Ever. Shem is the son of Noah, and his son is Ever. And they had a place of learning. And it says that actually Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov all learned there. So Yaakov, from a very young age, is sitting and learning. And so here we have a beautiful connection, is that here in our portion, where it says Yaakov wanted to sit in Shalva, so it's like after he left the tents of learning and he went to get married, he had 12 sons and a daughter. He had all the problems with his father-in-law, Lavan, and then he had all the problems with the story of Shechem, last week's Torah portion. Now he wants like a break, like we said. He has been contending with forces around him for his whole life. And he wants to sit in Shalva. What does he remember? How he used to sit and learn in a blissful state. So if we put this all together for ourselves, what do we want to learn from this? We want to learn that this world, and I'm sure everyone watching and who will watch, we all have problems, we all have challenges, we all have difficult moments, days, weeks, we have difficult relationships. Life is not simple, but that doesn't mean that we can't carve out moments and spaces, mental spaces of of peace and bliss. Every week we have Shabbos. Again, Shabbos is based on the word to sit. And for anyone who's experienced Shabbat, there is no peace in the world like Shabbat, bar none. Shabbat is bliss. It's the Garden of Eden, as close as we can get in this world. But through meditation, we mentioned three things that lead to a blissful frame of mind: prayer, meditation, and learning Torah. Now, for those people who are watching, if your mind, actually if my mind as well, is in like 5 different places at the same time, and you're just kind of listening to me, that is not conducive to being in a meditative state. But just like we've learned, for people who have been coming to all of the classes, there's this idea of becoming one with the music, where we put our whole being and we become one with the music. We have no other thoughts. So it's possible when we sit and learn, whether it's from a book or from a teacher, if we're totally focused on what is being said, what is being taught and given over, and our hearts are open and our minds are open, this is meditation. Prayer can be a meditation. Prayer can also be done by rote. We read the words, we have fulfilled our obligation, but that doesn't get us into a meditative state. But prayer, music, meditation, learning, and remember, Yitzchak went out to the field to meditate. Being in nature, all of these are conducive to a meditative state of mind. Okay, so now we want to add a new component, that the word teshuva, which means repentance, or quite literally return, is the same root as to sit. It's the same root as Shabbat. Teshuvah is shuv, shev. And here it means return. So if we put the two meanings together of sitting and returning, when we sit in meditation, our soul returns to its source. It returns to its pristine, pure, blissful source. And that's what tshuva is. That's what repentance is. When we're doing what we should be doing, and our path is a path of morality and ethics and being good people, then we return to the source of our soul, which is pure, which is good. When we're doing things that we shouldn't be doing, we feel off kilter. We don't feel good with ourselves. We're off note. It's a cacophony. We're not in tune. But when we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, then we're right on. And we return not only to God, but we return to the source of our soul, which is God. Returning to the most inner point of our being, in a sense, is returning to the point of God within us. And this is applicable to every person. Every person can take advantage of this activity that we're calling meditation. But here we're saying something very, very deep, that if we're looking one-dimensionally, then prayer is prayer, meditation is meditation, learning is something else, music is something else, being in nature is something else. But there's a holistic way of seeing that all of these, in a sense, are different facets of the same type of soul energy. Now, there's a very important expression in Kabbalah and Chassidut called Ratzo V'Shov, which is called running and returning. The word for returning, of course, is the same word we've been using, Shev, Shabbat, Teshuvah. They're all the same root, to run and to return. And this is called the dynamic of life. This is the pulse of our heart beating. It's running and returning. The pulse of our blood, our breathing, in and out, in and out, in and out, the tides changing, running and returning. And all of energy, all of physics is this AC/DC, is this vibrational movement of running and returning. So going back to the Torah portion, so Yaakov begins his life sitting in the tents of learning. That's the type of person he was. Esav was the hunter. He was out. He was running. Yaakov was sitting. But then, once he took the blessing and the birthright from Esav, and he left home to get married, to build the Jewish people, there he was running. In this week's Parsha, he's back in Israel, and now he wants to sit. So he's sitting, running, and returning. That's the context of Yaakov's life. But what happens? The troubles of Yosef have come upon him. So he had no peace of mind for 22 years until he was reunited with Yosef. And then the last 17 years of his life, we'll get there in another 3 parshas, Vayeishev, and Yaakov lived. In his last 17 years of his life, he was able to sit. He was able to sit. So that's the context of Yaakov's life, this sitting, running, and returning. Now, I want to just give one more insight, and then we'll bring it all together. The word Yeshiva for sitting in this parsha, its numerical value is 312. It's gematria. For those who are not familiar, every letter in Hebrew has a numerical value. When you add them up, you get a number. And then you compare other words or terms that have that number to find deeper connections. So this word to sit equals the word chadash, which means new. New. So this is a very, very important point. There are many, many types of meditation. The one that is most commonly known in the world is Eastern meditation. And a lot of meditations are to get us to a peaceful, blissful state. This has high value, especially in the 24/7, pretty crazy world that we live in right now. Carving out 5 minutes or half an hour or an hour of peaceful meditation, contemplation is so valuable. And this is a legitimate type of Jewish meditation. But the essence of Jewish meditation is to come up with new insight. And that's why a lot of Jewish meditation is Torah oriented, meaning taking verses, taking the stories of the Torah, taking words, taking letters, taking names of God, taking the Sfirot, and meditating on in a Torah context in order to come up with new insight, something chadash about ourselves, about God, about the world we live in, about relationships, the whole thing. So I want to end with a blessing because we're out of time. We're out of time. So I want to end with a blessing that, first of all, each and every one of us in our own way, try to take the time. There's so many books and websites that we can delve into what meditation is. And there's so many books out now about Jewish meditation. You just have to Google books on Jewish meditation, and there's scores of them, scores and scores and scores. So take the time and explore the idea of making prayer into a meditation, of listening to music, not just in the background, but in a meditative way, of going out to nature and not just looking for a nice view, but to listen to nature and to really become one with nature.